And hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee Kegs in Kriegsspiel. I'm your host, Marshall. I am just getting the Discord set up here so that we can talk here in real time. Anybody who has questions or comments today, feel free to raise your hand so that you can come up to the stage and we can talk. Let's talk today. Today's topic is about pet peeves. It's about things that people do that I really wish they wouldn't do, or maybe not do in Kriegsspiel. So we're going to talk about that directly. I want to say hello to everybody who is here. Those of you who are in the audience here on Discord, I know some of you will bounce right back out. You got other things going on. But I do hope that the topic is of interest to many of you and that you'll kind of stay on. And if you don't, feel free to come back and watch the recording on YouTube. Okay. And hello to Achilles, who happens to be watching from Bali right now. Good to see you, Achilles. Hope everything is going swimmingly over there in that tropical paradise where you are hanging out. All right, let's talk about things that annoy me in Kriegsspiel, and I think they annoy a lot of other people as well. I don't think it's just me. And it's just going to be kind of a lot of talking. I'm not going to do a whole lot of drawing or coloring on the maps here. I do have the module open so you have something else to look at besides my face. And I do sometimes drop some tiles on here to illustrate certain concepts and such. So I'll be doing that. Think of this as sort of as my teacher's chalkboard or something, if you will. But aside from that, yeah, I'm mostly just going to be talking at you, but here we are. Okay, so one of the first things that I think really annoys me and a lot of people are long post-battle commentary, particularly from players. When it comes from umpires, it's understandable because the umpire, especially in a large game, may have a lot of things to cover. Traditionally, because Kriegsspiel is a learning exercise, the way it works is after a battle is over, the umpire will provide a critique to all of the players. Then, out of respect to the other umpires then speak in turn. Then, finally, the side commanders, because the side commanders often have valuable insights that the other umpires want to access or tap into. In fact, sometimes the lead umpire may call on the side commanders first. So there's not a particular order. There's a traditional order in which we do it. But that's not always the case. Depending on the nature of the scenario, like if it's sort of an evaluation, you may ask the players to speak first. But then you go through all of the players, and it never fails that you get some players who make it all about them. And I know this because, well, I do this all the time. Actually, I kind of do it jokingly. No matter how bad we lose, I'll claim that I was the greatest player in the game and that I won the game single-handedly. And then I go into my more serious comments. That's like my little shtick. But there are players who will just go on and on and on and on and on. Now, I don't have particular individuals in mind. So if you think this applies to you, well, if the shoe fits, feel free to lace it up and wear it. But no, I'm not singling out any particular players. Some of my favorite and most beloved players do this. And again, I am probably guilty of this myself. But after you've played a game that's gone for 5 or 6 hours or something, you're tired, you probably want to go to the bathroom, you want to get something to eat, you want to take a nap, you got other things to do. And the last thing that you want to do is talk about how some guy micromanaged his units in order to score one on the enemy. It's like, okay, we get it that you did that and that's fine, and it's okay to mention a certain thing or to focus in on something. But when the comments get into, like the 5-minute range and then longer, and it just goes on and on and on, yeah, that's a little much. It really is the responsibility of the lead umpire to cut that off or manage it. In large games that have run for a really long time, I've seen lead umpires, to their immense credit, just say, you know what, that's it. We're done, or they'll say that we're not going to go through all the players, we just don't have time. They might go through the side commanders and maybe some of their, core division commanders, depending on the scale of the game, but they don't go to every individual commander. And that makes a lot of sense. I think that's smart to do it that way. People can always offer their detailed commentary in the chat after the battle. There's an after action report channel where you can get as detailed as you want. And in fact, you can write everything out, so you can sit there and go into immense detail about what you were thinking and what was going through your mind and how you scored one on the enemy or whatever. Or whatever your pet peeve is, your concern is, whatever. You can do that in the after action reports or in one of the chat channels after the battle. But my preference is don't keep everybody tied down while you talk about you for an extended period. It's reasonable to talk about you for 2 or 3 minutes, but when you get into that 5-minute territory and beyond, that's enough. Okay, let's save that for later. Let some other people get in. Let us get out of class so that we can get on with our lives, because we have things to do, whether that's go to bed, eat, chores, whatever. We've already covered that. All right, so there we have it. I want to say good day to Cone, who is present on the YouTube, and there's a number of viewers on the YouTube. I want to say hello and thank you. I'm glad you're there. Thomas, MG Thomas, Can Paku, Hendrik, Emperor Leo, Arp, good to see you guys all here in the audience as well. All right, let's take a look at one of the other pet peeves that I have, and this also applies to live games. And it's what I call the 30-minute update, or the 30-minute turn cycle. Now, there's usually a really good reason why the turns are taking 30 minutes to get you an update. The IKS standard is between 10 and 20 minutes, 15 minutes being probably the average. 10 minutes is very hard to do. It really is hard to get an update under 10 minutes, even with a full team of umpires and experienced umpires who know the system really, really well. It is really hard to get in updates under 10 minutes, just because there's a certain amount of work that goes into processing an update. You have to talk to, let's talk about what goes into it, right? There's a thing called the turn cycle. I also call it the cadence, depending on if I'm emphasizing the routine or whatever, the pace at which it goes. But really the turn cycle or cadence, I kind of use them interchangeably. But it goes like this. It begins with a report to the players. It's the first thing you do. You tell the players, here's what you see. Here's what you've got going on. Here's what you need to know. Okay, so you give all of that. You set the scene and everything for the players. You will usually have more than one player. So you go to player 1, then you go to player 2. You might go to player 3 and 4, depending on how many players you have. Then you come back to player 1 and you ask for their orders. And then player 1 has to give you their orders. Now, player 1 does need to give you their orders, and I would give them no more than 60 seconds to do it. And if they can't get those orders out in 60 seconds, I just go to the next channel. But that's because I'm mean like that and I don't have time. Generally speaking, however, as a player, once you have your update, you know that the umpire is going to come back. And he's going to come back in 1 to 5 minutes, depending on whatever's going on. You need to be ready with those orders. And if you're not, too bad, because real life, you're not going to have time to sit there and contemplate for 30 minutes. Nor is there going to necessarily be anyone from whom you can ask questions. Now, I do think some questions are reasonable. For example, is that unit stationary or is it moving? I think that's a good question to ask an umpire if you're looking at a still image of a map and it's not clear if enemy units are in motion. That's a good question to ask. But aside from that, getting into it with the umpire, no, just give your orders. Now, that can take about 5 to 10 minutes in and of itself for all of the umpires in the entire game to go out, give those updates, get those orders, and return to the lead umpire. Then the lead umpire has to query each umpire and say, what does your guy want to do? And what they should do then is draw the orders on the map. Or really the umpires themselves should be drawing the orders as the players give them. Everything should be drawn on the map. Nothing moved, everything drawn. Then the lead umpire goes from top to bottom, right to left, aardvark to zebra, whatever they want to do, and they resolve each little portion of the map simultaneously. They move the pieces for both sides. They sort of average everything together. Okay, this is where they meet. This is where things go off the rails. This is where combat occurs. Let's roll the dice. They issue a resolution, and then the umpires go back out to the players. If you have a lot of experienced umpires, then you don't even need the lead umpire to go space to space or combat to combat to combat. They can just, the umpires themselves can do it. That's why it's so important to train umpires. The more trained veteran umpires we have, the faster these games can move, which is better for everyone. That's why we really want to encourage people to help and assist umpiring. Learn the different systems and then get out there and do it, because then these games start to roll a lot faster. That means more turns for you. You can do more stuff. Now, that whole process should take no more than about 15 minutes. 20 minutes in a big, heavy-duty game, especially where only the lead umpire really knows the rules really well. 10 to 15 minutes where everybody's pretty much educated. It's really hard to do anything under 10 minutes unless it's a really tiny game and everybody knows what they're doing. So 10 to 15 minutes, pretty reasonable. 20 minutes, you're starting to push it. But 30 minutes, you're just going on too long. And if you're taking 30 minutes to do updates as a lead umpire, you need to talk to your assistants. You need to find out, you need to watch your assistant umpires and find out who is taking the longest to get their reports out and their player orders and get back to you. Who's taking a long time? And you can usually see that because they're the last umpire to bounce back into the umpire channel. When that happens, if you're the lead umpire and you don't have a responsibility at the moment, if you've been smart and you've assigned all the players to other umpires, that allows you to go around and troubleshoot. So now you can follow that umpire, pop into the channel when they're with the player, and find out what's going on. And often it's that a player is just taking too long. They're full of questions. They're full of conditional orders. Well, do this, if, and, but, then this, or whatever. There's a lot of that going on. And if that happens, then what you want to do is counsel the umpire to say, okay, tell them no, they have to give their order in 30 seconds, or tell them that they can't give these branching conditional logic trees for their orders. They just have to say this or that or whatever. You can also train and counsel the player so that the player learns to give more effective orders. Whatever the issue may be, okay, there are some umpires who will pop into a channel and there'll be like 2 or 3 players there, and they'll just have a conversation. Oh, really? Oh my God, that's so cool. Whatever. And they just start having a conversation, and there's giggling and there's laughter, and it's beautiful. And it's also awful because it's slowing down the game. So when that happens, deal with it. So try to avoid the 30-minute update and try to move the game along so that, like, if you're running 15-minute turns and the updates take 15 minutes, then you're moving in real time, and that's just about all that could be asked of a player and the umpires of the umpire. All right, next pet peeve, number 6 here. Players who drop out. Every time someone drops out, I think of that scene from View to a Kill. It's a James Bond 007 movie where the evil guy named Zorin has a blimp and it's flying over San Francisco Bay. And he has just disclosed his evil plan to all of these business people who probably are a little bit less than ethical because, he's interested in cornering the market on computer chips. This was in the 80s when computer chips were like, wow, right? And one of the guys is like, this is ridiculous. I want no part of it. And so Zorn just has his evil henchwoman show him to, out of the little briefing room on their blimp high over San Francisco Bay. And she says, this way, he says, Mayday will prepare you a drink. And the guy goes into this doorway, and then she pulls this lever, and the stairs turn into a slide, and the guy just falls out of the bottom of the blimp, Classic evil, Bond villain stuff. And then you see Mr. Zorn, the bad guy, played by Christopher Walken. Very, very masterful performance. I love Christopher Walken. He says, would anybody else care to drop out? And so I think of that. Look, if you want to drop out, fine, drop out, But you're not going to be in my good graces when you try to come back, especially if you've dropped out just in the middle of the game. I do understand that sometimes things happen. There are people who have lives. I imagine if I were playing a game and my wife called, it was like, I have a flat tire. While I should have the conversation that, well, you have a spare tire, right? You know how to change a tire, do you not? And you can call, the AAA, and they will come and fix the tire for you. Or maybe you can find some, big hunky guy there at the gym, and he will fix the tire for you. Why should I leave my Kriegsspiel game, right? No, I can't have that conversation. I actually have to go and do it myself. And the big hunky guy is just laughing as I struggle with the little thing, thank you, Chad, for laughing. But anyway, yeah, no, you have to respond to those life emergencies, right? You have to do that. But that should happen like almost never. What are the odds that a life emergency comes up every Saturday morning at exactly 9 or 10 a.m., right? That's a problem. If you can't commit to an entire game, which is going to be usually 4 to 6 or 7 hours, I would say 6 hours is pretty reasonable. We've done a good job getting these games down to about 4 or 5 hours. If you have to leave within the next 6 hours, number one, let the umpires especially know so they can plan for your departure. If you can only play for a few hours, but you really want to play, there are things we can do to accommodate you because, yes, we do want you to play, even if it's only for a few hours. We very much don't want you to quit after 3 hours. It still breaks the experience. But we will work with you if you have a consistent and reliable pattern of attendance. If we know you are a reliable person who consistently comes and you play the whole game and we like you and everything goes well, and then one day you say, hey, Marshall, I can only play for a few hours. Do you want me or not? And I will say, you know what, go ahead and play. I'll give you this command, and it will be one of those little throwaway things or something, or I'll put you with another player so that when you leave, the other player can take over the command. We'll figure it out, right? Also, if you come in late, sometimes we can give you a command late. The most common thing we do with players who can't stay is we just say, well, help us get started. Help us get set up. Help us umpire. At least relay orders or something. That's actually a tremendous help, even if you can't stay for the whole time. It gets things rolling, especially at the beginning. So we appreciate that. But if you are a player who consistently drops out in the middle of a game, and this also includes play-by-post games, but if you bail on the games consistently, we're going to get to know your name, and we're going to have a very hard time letting you play future games because it breaks the game for everyone. It's game breaking. Just like in real life in a battle, if a general gets shot from their horse, it can mess things up. Now, there's a certain amount of that we play with because, yeah, it's a historical thing. It happens. We tell the commanders, now suddenly you have to deal with it. But the difference between Kriegsspiel and that happening in real life is in real life, that commander had a lieutenant who can immediately step into the role who is at least somewhat familiar with what's going on. In Kriegsspiel, because we each play in an isolated channel from others, usually including in play-by-post, there is no able lieutenant who knows what's going on who can step into your shoes and fill your shoes. So while it might be something we play with or we tolerate every once in a while because it's just how the world works, it is not something we want to do consistently or routinely. It is game breaking. It slows things down. In fact, it grinds everything to a halt, and then the umpires have to get everything rolling again. If you cannot commit to play the entire game, do not join. Or let everybody know I can only be here for however long it will be. I've had play-by-post players say, I am leaving on an extended trip in 1 month, and I will be gone for 30 days, and then when I come back, I would like to play again. Okay, I can work with that, because you've told me up front I can make accommodations. But if you just drop out, and you do this consistently, that's a problem. We're not going to let you play in our games, because it just ruins the experience for everybody. So be upfront with your umpires and let them know what your obligations are. Likewise, umpires to players, and that brings us to number 5 on my list, umpires who drop out. This happens all the time, and it's because you get assistant umpires who will commit, And then they look at the level of commitment that's required, and they look at the level of commitment that's required in their real life, and they're like, can't do it. Or they'll get started. Or a game will run into, their last semester of school or finals week or whatever it is that they have going on. And when that happens, the umpires typically drop out because real life takes precedent. Now, I wish that weren't the thing. I wish that you were all basically enslaved and obligated to help run games until you die or until I get tired at least. But that typically doesn't work that way. I get it. Real life exists. So, again, the same thing for umpires applies that the same thing that applies for the players also applies for the umpires. If you can't stay for the entire game, whether that's a live game or a play-by-post because you've got life coming up in, however many days, let everybody know so they can accommodate you, okay? The one thing you don't want to do is just disappear because then there are several days of lag, and this typically happens in play-by-post. There are several days of lag where we're like, what happened to you? Where'd you go? What'd you do? And we're waiting for you to come back, and you don't come back. And so we just kind of delayed the game, or we have players who are out there and we think that you're taking care of them and you're just not. And the players like, what happened? Where's my update? And so on. It's problematic. So again, just communicate. And here's the deal, right? Let's say you're in a live game, whether you're a player or an umpire, or let's say you're in a play-by-post, and you're just not having fun. You're just not having fun. Or maybe something happened in your life, and you're just, you know what? My brain chemistry has changed. I'm no longer interested in Kriegsspiel, or I am no longer interested in this game, or I've decided I'd rather do something else, or I must do something else. Whatever. You've decided to move on. Break up with us, but give us the dignity of a phone call or a text, give us the dignity of that meeting that says, hey, Marshall, I'm sorry, but it ain't working out. I've got to go. I'm going to go play this other Kriegsspiel game, or I've got too many games going on right now, or I've got finals coming up, or whatever. We understand. We're not going to hate you. I might, but most people won't because they're normal. And we get it. And it's like, okay, well, thank you for letting us know. It's sort of the least worst outcome here. It's better than you disappearing. And now we can make some accommodation. We can scramble. We can cover. We can make it work. But when you drop out, especially as an umpire, that's massive because there are things that that we might not know. And if you simply disappear, you see how that can be really, really bad, So try to avoid that, right? Try to avoid the sudden disappearing umpire syndrome because that's a huge pet peeve of mine because it really spoils games. Let's take a quick look here at a couple of comments. Cone says, I was once in a live game where an update took almost 1 hour. Yeah, I get that. Achilles says, I like to write out Erasmus bot orders myself. Little logic trees there, right? The Gobbler, my life emergencies always turn up just after I've received a bad update. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Because the bad update, by the way, is sometimes an incredible opportunity to score points. People don't realize that in Kriegsspiel. They don't realize that sometimes bad news or a disaster is the best thing that can happen to you because that's where you can make or break your Kriegsspiel career. That's like a big opportunity, It's like when the pitcher throws a fastball. You're very likely to strike out, but at the same time, if you connect with that fastball, you're going to hit a home run. You really could. So, yeah. Don't react to bad updates like it's just the end of the world and you're going to throw up your hands and quit because sometimes bad updates are blessings in disguise and you just got to do the work, Okay, so there's that. Okay, let's continue here with the next one. All right, tea parties. I was in a tea party in my live game yesterday, not by choice. I was at my assigned post, but the other commanders were in a tea party with me. Actually, there were two of us and our commander-in-chief, and then a fourth commander rode over. This is what a tea party looks like. You've got the commander-in-chief, and you've got three or, usually two or more subordinates is what I call a tea party. This here, reasonable, very reasonable. This, somewhat reasonable. There are situations where this happens. They start to, I frown upon it, especially if it persists for multiple turns. This, where you have, 3 or more subordinate commanders with the commander in chief at the same spot on the battlefield, that's a problem, okay? Why do players do this? Well, it's not really about command and control, which is a valid reason to do this. The real reason is because they're bored. Usually the updates are taking a long time. Maybe there's not a whole lot happening. They want to hang out together in a channel and make conversation. Let me tell you this, okay? If you are so bored stiff out of your mind that you are about to just jump out your window, rather than continue playing the game, go ahead and just bounce into someone else's channel. Just bounce into a neutral channel with someone else and just have small talk about whatever you want to talk about. Just don't talk about the game itself, because that's kind of like cheating, right? So don't do that. But I have no problem with people sitting in the same chat channel having a conversation about Kriegsspiel in general, or the news, or any other topic of common interest to them. That's just fine. No problem there whatsoever. If that's what you need to get through the game, by all means, go ahead. That's fine. That's fine. Just be aware that the umpires are going to have to pull you out for your updates. And you need to be ready with that, right? You can't be so distracted with your side conversation that you're actually no longer playing the game. Okay, so the game is your first priority. But aside from that, yeah, especially if you're in one of those 30-minute update games, I'm not going to fault you. This comes from when I ran live games, and I run live games all the time. In fact, I'm running one in a week. When you run a live game and the players are like, well, they're all sitting around the same table. I almost lost my train of thought there. They're all sitting around the same table because in a physical game, you've only got the 3 maps. You don't have infinite space usually. And so what do? They end up talking, and they even talk about the game. And now I, as an umpire, can be really, really strict on them and say, how dare you talk about the game, or I just kind of let it go. And that's what I do. I usually just let it go. Why? Well, I assume that a commander in the field would have a staff of officers who they would be talking to about the battle, and the other people around the table simulate that staff of officers. And ultimately, because we're playing for fun and I want the players to have a fun experience, I'll be like, okay, have a fun experience. It's fine. If they're having fun, I'm happy. Okay? So at the end of the day, if you have to congregate in real life and have a conversation, especially about something besides the game, in order to get through the game, to cut through the boredom, I'm okay with that. But on the game, on the battlefield itself, if you're congregated here with your commanders, that's a problem, because for one, you're not out in the field with your units. If you've got guys out over here and here and here, and the commanders are all right here, they are not here commanding their formations. They are here. And this is going to take 5 to 10 minutes to get a dispatch to that commander. And they don't see what's going on over here. And then it's going to take more time. Not only is this more work for the umpires to manage this, in fact, most umpires just won't bother. You're going to next hear your unit's retreating. What? Why? Well, you're not there to command them. How can you command a unit if you can't see what it's doing? You have to be with your men. That's your post. Your post is with your command. Your post is not at headquarters. And then the other thing is when the commander goes up and then the commander starts micromanaging this guy. I was in a battle yesterday where I was a corps commander and I had a division commander. And I told the division commander what I preferred him to do, but I allowed the division commander to make his own decision. In fact, I was very clear with my division commander and with my umpire, who was in the channel, that it is up to the division commander to issue the orders. I say this to people: if you want to be a division commander or a brigade commander, whatever it would be, then be a brigade commander. Be a division commander. You want to be a division commander, you want to do division commander things, then be a division commander. Otherwise, if you are a corps commander, you need to do corps commander things and you need to be a corps commander. And generally speaking, corps commanders don't do division commanders things. Why? Because they're not division commanders. There are occasions that rarely arise where a corps commander may micromanage something because it is absolutely critical. I get that. But no, those occasions are so rare it should not be happening. And you have to especially be on guard against this in live games where where you're playing in person, because there'll be one person who'll just start running the table. But generally speaking, look, if you want to be a division commander, be a division commander. Otherwise, be a corps commander. If you want to be an army commander, be an army commander, but don't be a corps commander. This is very logical, very simple. So if you have a problem with that, address that. And take a level of command that suits the level of activity and the nature of command that suits you. Otherwise, don't do this. Don't congregate together. Make sure that everybody is at their post, commanding the units that they're supposed to command, and have them report back to you. I once played an in-person Kriegsspiel where I didn't even sit at the table with the map. I had the map on my little iPad. I had a picture of the map. And I made my individual commanders send me dispatches, and I commanded through the dispatches while they were at the actual table. I did that on purpose so that they would feel they had the autonomy to command as they saw fit with their own eyes, and so that we wouldn't have a tea party. And it made it into a really cool experience. It was actually kind of fun to play that way. All right, let's take a look here. If you make a mistake, you get ready for Marshall's wrath. No. It's never my wrath. If you make a mistake, I just laugh and have a great time. Achilles says, preach, brother. Command your level of command and use the chain of command also, he says. And yeah, that's how you're supposed to do it. Okay. All right. Just a few more pet peeves here. I know I've already gone long, but I think this is a good episode, so I'm just going to keep rolling here. 3 more to go. Bad dispatches. What makes a dispatch bad? A dispatch is bad if you don't have 4 critical pieces of information. Who it's to. Oh, there goes Demeter. Actually, I'm yelling at Demeter, and she's a senior dog, and she's deaf. She can't hear me at all. Oh, Lord. But the other dogs are playing with her. I've got 3 dogs, and the other 2 are quite young, and she's just this old lady dog. But anyway, I digress. Let's get on. Bad dispatches. Good dispatches have 4 elements. Number 1, you got to say who it's to. People are pretty good about that. You got to say who it's from. People get bad about that. They assume that, well, I posted it at my channel, it should be obvious who it's from. Well, the problem is the umpire takes your dispatch and they copy it, and then they paste it to another channel. And, you've put 2, but the person who receives it doesn't know what channel it came from unless the umpire either types it in or tells you. So unless it is obvious who the dispatch is from, the player who's receiving it will not know who sent it. So I don't care how obvious it is. You could be standing, 100 yards away on the battlefield and you're sending this dispatch. You put from on there 100% of the time. Why? It's good practice. It's discipline. Always put to and from on your dispatches. Always, always, always. Never not do it, no matter. I don't care if it's a 2-player game. Never not do it. Always do it, right? Just for the practice and the discipline, and because it's good military sense, right? Next, put the time of your dispatch. If you don't know the time, take a look at the time of your last update and put like the next time for the next update or something in between. But put a time on your dispatch, because sometimes dispatches get mixed up and they arrive out of order. There are a number of reasons for this. Part because there is a dynamic battlefield and you have couriers going everywhere, and umpires will often track couriers if dispatches have to go long distances. But in the process of couriers traveling longer distances, there's more of a chance that the courier will take the wrong road or the messages get delivered out of order, especially if they are running a path that is close to the action, because the action is fluid and dynamic. They could get to a position, they could see enemy cavalry, or they could see a unit and they're not sure of its affiliation, and they say, well, we're going to go around rather than risk capture. There are things that happen that can cause dispatches to arrive out of order. So if your dispatch does not have a time, imagine you give an order to a commander and you say attack the enemy. And then 5 or 10 minutes later, the situation changes and you realize that attack is going to be a disaster. And so you order the commander hold position. Well, suddenly, because of the dynamic battlefield, the courier with the order to hold position arrives first, and then the courier with the order to attack arrives second. Well, congratulations, you now have a disaster. Okay? So there you are. So make sure that your dispatches are good. The next thing, other than that, is location. Tell your commander where the heck you are. You can say, well, I see the enemy, they're congregating on the hill. They're about 400 yards distance. We're, about to, form up and engage. Okay, that's really nice. That's really cool. Good luck, bro. Cool story, bro. The problem is I don't know where the hell you are, so I don't know what's going on. Always provide a location with your dispatches. Provide your location, provide the location of the relevant enemy. Give this information because it is critical to your commander. Because if your commander doesn't know what is where, then the commander is blind in one eye or probably both, and they cannot command the army if they are blind. And you on the front are the eyes of your commander at the front. You need to report the location to your commander. Don't assume your commander knows. Don't say, well, the commander ordered me to go over here let's see here. My commander ordered me to go to Faye, so I'm just going to say, hey, the enemy is on top of the hill. And I'm just going to assume the commander knows that the enemy is here. No. How do they know you even made it to Faye? Or how do they know what hill? Here's another hill. Here's another hill. There's a hill right here. Which hill? Just be clear. You may think it's ridiculous. You may think it's redundant. You may think it's over detailed, but don't be lazy. It literally takes you 1 second to type F-E-Y, Faye, on your dispatch. Don't be lazy, okay? Spend the second. Don't spend it. Invest the second and write Faye on your dispatch. The other thing is make sure that your dispatches are clear. That brings me to number 2, which is unclear orders. One of the problems, and I see this all the time, and in fact, I am constantly on my own guard because I do this too. I am on my own guard because I just think it's a problem that we all fall into. This is a very common problem, which is unclear orders. And what is the origin of unclear orders? Well, laziness is one, but the other one is you do get players who go too deep into their orders. They have such long orders. It's what I call a Moby Dick. And you issue a Moby Dick of orders, you might as well not even bother because the orders are so long and lengthy that the umpire who is pressed for time is not going to read them in detail. They're not going to absorb all of what you want to do. They're not going to sit there like a poem and just take it in. Oh, wow, let us go, you and I, and what the heck? I'm not reading T.S. Eliot, folks, okay? This is not the wasteland. This is, your orders. So let's read the orders and get them processed. Make them clear, concise, and simple. But don't assume, and here's the big thing, is people assume in their mind, everybody has what I call the movie in their mind. I ask my wife this all the time because I'll say to her, in the movie in your head, what happens today? And she'll say, well, we drive to San Luis Obispo and we go to the mall and we shop. We go first to the shoe store, then we go to the purse store, then we go to Ross and we go to Marshall's and we go to Target. And then we go here for lunch, and then we do this, and then we're going to go on a hike, and we're going to climb this entire freaking mountain and all these other things that she does. Right? She has this movie in her head of how the day is supposed to go. And if I say to her, you know what, how about instead of going to the shoe store first, we go to Best Buy first? Oh man, that messes up the script. Oh man, if I pull something on her and I say, you know what, I also have to do this, this, and this today. Oh, she'll get mad. And we all do this because we all have a movie in our head of how things are supposed to play out. The problem is we don't share the script with the people around us, whether it's our friend, it's our spouse, it's our coworkers, it's our commanders or our umpires. We don't share the script. And we assume that they know how the script is supposed to go. So when we write our orders, we have this script in our mind, and we basically say the equivalent of go to scene 2. But we haven't explained what takes place in detail in scene 2. And then the umpire gets the order and they're like, well, they want me to do something, but I'm not sure what. I'm not sure what the task or the purpose is. I'm not sure how long or how far or when it stops or, what. And situations change. And so these orders no longer quite appear to apply. And you're in a situation where as an umpire now, you're having to intervene and play on behalf of the player, because the player's orders are unclear. And the player thinks they gave very clear and explicit orders. They really do. They think their orders were just the greatest. But they're not. They're incomplete or they're unclear because the player has a movie in their head of how the battle will unfold. And they forget the enemy gets a say. The enemy has a say, and the enemy is going to do everything they can to mess up your script. They're deliberately trying to mess up your script. So can you imagine how wrong you get it when your spouse wants to go shopping with you and you get it wrong under those conditions, but you're both on the same team? Can you imagine when an enemy is going to do to you when they have absolutely opposite interest of you? Oh boy, right? And then the umpire's caught between that. So make sure that your orders are absolutely clear, concise, simple, not too long, but also not too vague. Keep in mind that you have a movie in your head. You have a script of how it's supposed to go, but only you can read that script. You must share that script with the umpire, but you have to do it in a way that is not too short, not too long, but clear and concise. And that, my friends, is an art. And by the way, that is literally the entire purpose of the exercise of Kriegsspiel. You want to know what Kriegsspiel is? It's an exercise about giving orders. That's literally what it is. It's not a game. It's not anything else. It is literally an exercise about giving orders first and foremost. Now, there's a lot of other skills, teamwork, and all this other stuff that comes with it. How to read a map, combined arms, but it's really about giving clear and concise orders. And I think we really do need to practice that a lot more. In fact, we need training for that for our players. It's something we do very poorly at training. All right. The last pet peeve is my big one, and it's arguing with umpires. Players argue with umpires because in the movie in their head, my infantry marches this far, they stop, they deploy into line, and they deliver a devastating volley to the enemy. Okay, but remember the enemy gets a say, and maybe the enemy doesn't play like that, or maybe you didn't tell me that they're supposed to stop, or maybe you didn't tell me they're supposed to march. Maybe you gave me orders and it's play-by-post and you gave those orders 4 weeks ago and I don't remember because I'm not going to scroll back through Moby Dick to chapter 1 to see what you said in the first paragraph. Oh, look, here it says, call me Ishmael. Oh, okay. No, I forgot that because I slept since then about 30 times and I have had an entire month of life experiences occur between the time that you said, call me Ishmael, and I alone survived to tell the tale. So, my friends, you have to remind the umpires and you cannot argue with them. And if the umpires get your orders wrong, roll with it. It happens. Now, I do believe it is reasonable to say certain things to the umpire. For example, why wasn't this order obeyed? Okay, that's fine. And the umpire may say, well, it just wasn't. Because there could be things happening that the umpire knows about that you don't. So you have to accept whatever response the umpire gives, but it is okay to remind the umpire. You could say, hey, umpire, I think you made a mistake. I wanted it done this way. And most of the time, you as a player, you're actually right. The umpire just messed up. Then it's up to the umpire to decide, can I reverse my mistake? Can I fix it without impacting the other players in the rest of the game? Or do I have to force the player to live with it? And the problem with that is the farther along you go from that mistake, the more unfair it becomes to one side or the other. The umpire may also say, this is an opportunity for you to score a point. I'm going to leave my mistake in place and see how you respond to it. And remember how I said that sometimes bad news is the best news you can receive because it's an opportunity for you to win a medal, more or less? Here you go. And so you react to that and you handle it. There are times where the umpires screw the players. They rarely do that deliberately. They often do it mistakenly. And it happens probably in about every game I see. It happens that frequently. It happens all the time. What bugs me, though, is when players sit there and they just rant about the umpires. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe. How did this happen? How did that happen? Look, guys, it just did. Number one, we're not all professionals here. Number two, we're trying the best we can. Number three, we're doing it under pressure. That's both players and umpires, so we get it. But at the end of the day, real life isn't very clean. It's very messy. You know, you have that script, you have that movie in your head. How often does it play out the way you want? I mean, you can literally produce, I live near enough Hollywood that I actually know script writers. I've written scripts. I mean, I've been in this culture in California where people make movies. I have close friends who are part of the film and movie industry. And they write scripts, and the scripts do not go the way they write them. The scripts get changed. In fact, script writing is a team exercise usually. It's a room full of people who sit around and they throw ideas back and forth and they write the dialogue and then they say, I don't like that line, let's change it. A person writes a script, but the script rarely arrives untouched on the screen. Now, the script that gets there is recited word for word. The actors and stuff don't get to change the script usually, but the script is always changed from the time it appears in your head and the time it goes on paper and then gets to the studio where the actors will actually sit there and read the lines, and it gets to the stage. When the script gets to the stage, it gets changed by that time. And it's the same thing in this, right? You have a movie in your head, you have a script, we're going to go here, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, the infantry will go here, the artillery will go here, and sometimes that gets messed up. And you just have to deal with it. Okay, so that's really important that you deal with that. Don't argue with the umpires. You can get as angry and annoyed as you like, and you have the right to be upset when the umpires screw up your orders. Trust me when I tell you the umpires often feel bad when they make mistakes. It's embarrassing to them. It's hard for them. They have to sleep with themselves at night. But sometimes letting the mistake ride is one of the best things that can happen to you, and probably better for everybody because, the game just proceeds smoothly. Generally speaking, I know that when I make a mistake, I try to give the umpire or the player, some sort of compensation for that, whether it's consideration later or whatever. I try to make it up in some way, but I can't cheat. I can't really intervene. But I do keep it in mind. So even if you lose and the umpire made a mistake, in the umpire's mind, there's a little asterisk by your loss where really it is kind of more on the umpire than it is on the player. But that happens. That's just what happens. It's just like in a ball game, if the umpire or the referee makes a bad call and it doesn't get challenged and the bad call stands, well, teams have won or lost games on those bad calls. They do happen because people are people. We're human. All right? So try to bear with us. We try. And there are certain things that you can do to make it easier for us, and it gets back to the clear orders. Write clear dispatches, write clear orders, and we are less likely to mess things up. Remember, especially in play-by-post, it does not hurt to copy-paste your previous orders into a new post. Repeat them. That way they're always there because, again, you want me to go all the way back to Call Me Ishmael, and we're one chapter away from I Alone Survived to tell the tale. By the way, you no longer have to read Moby Dick. That's the story. You're good. Okay, just some closing commentary here. Let's see here. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Let's see here. There's a lot of comments. Don't be afraid to try new things. Yeah, that's fine. Do try new things. I don't know the context of that comment, but okay. In generally, that's true. Sushi's pretty tasty. I love sushi. I wouldn't have ever tried sushi. Try new things, yes. One time I umpired, I had a guy type something along the lines of, I have seed the enemy. That's from Cone. And yeah, the people do that. Cone also adds, he typed the name of the general who he was sending it wrongly. Okay, so yeah, sometimes you make mistakes and so on. He didn't type the time. He didn't even type that he was sending it. You can't make that up. Okay, so Wolfton here says to General McMarish at Fay, advance to the heights north of Fay and secure them. Okay, so that makes sense. That's a sensible order, right? So here I have Fay. There are heights north of Fay, which this is north of Fay. This is not north of Fay. This is north. This is east. So I'm assuming, based on the order, my orders are to march here and secure these heights. And that's what I'm going to do. Now, that's a clear dispatch. As long as the commander means here and not here, I think that's a good dispatch in terms of clear and concise orders. Okay, I have a task, which is march here. I have a purpose to secure them. I'm good to go. That's great. Good job. Good job, Wolfton. All right. There we are. Okay, Robert says, that's quite insightful about giving orders. I think as umpires, we are often too permissive of players complaining that the units didn't do exactly as they want. Yeah, again, I like repeating previous orders, especially in play-by posts, so they're always there. Especially if they're really important, make sure that you just copy-paste those down so that the umpire always sees those. The longer between the updates, the more time for the umpire to forget. So copy them. And just do the umpire a favor and be good to yourself as well. You deserve it. Robert says, I don't mean to be mean to players, but as a player, if your blocks aren't doing what you want, you need to be better at giving orders. And that's correct. And again, remember, play-by-post, things get forgotten. Wolfton says, I feel like every player's performance in a game needs to be analyzed, especially in live game. That's why these mistakes keep happening. Yes, we do a poor job of training people. We like to get in here and we like to play, but we do need more school to teach people how to play and how to umpire so that we minimize these errors. Okay, Robert says, another pet peeve of mine is when players give new orders every single turn. In reality, you'll just confuse your subordinates. Yeah, don't do that. That's a big pet peeve. Don't be repeating your or changing your orders. In fact, I cringe every time a commander is given an order and then the umpire comes back and they change their order in some way. I cringe at that. I hate that. If you watch me play live games, you'll find the umpire come to me, what are your orders? And I'll say, no new orders, no new orders, no new orders. In fact, I did that like 10 times yesterday. No new orders, no new orders. Why? Because my orders that I gave initially were just fine. You know, I don't have to change my orders. Just because it's a new turn doesn't mean you have to issue all new orders. Now, you may repeat your existing orders, but I would not necessarily change for the sake of change. That's a problem. All right, I'm just going to real quick ask if anybody in the audience has a question or a comment. If you want to, raise your hand. I'll invite you onto the stage. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up. All right, I'm not seeing any hands, so that's good. I think maybe I was really clear, I hope. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to invite everybody to please consider supporting us on Patreon, and the address for that is patreon.com/Kriegsspiel. I'm going to put that there into the comments on the YouTube. If you go there and help us out, $5 a month, you keep the IKS operating and in business. You know, we just spent about, I want to say between $100 and $200 at the end of May in the past couple of weeks, just to, you know, kind of keep the website and other things up and running. So there are some expenses associated with the IKS. So anything that you do, even if it's just that little $5 a month towards the Patreon, it keeps us rocking and rolling here, okay? So that's always greatly appreciated. I want to thank you all for being here. I hope that you found today's podcast to be insightful and helpful. And we are live every Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific with Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. So with that said, I don't have anything else. I don't want to belabor the point, so I'm going to wrap up, and I will see you on our next adventure.